So welcome everyone. This is Dianne Ellis. Of course, this is Business Wellness Cafe Resilient Series. This is season 2, and I'm about to introduce our guest. And of course, I'll save that for a bit longer. Of course, you know that this is my online show. That is the Heart Mind Coach Online. That's been in existence since 2018 online, and of course we've been going at it since 2001. I know it's been a long time coaching and educating and teaching folks about how to take care of themselves, self-care wise, and of course business wise. Business wellness is important. As you know, the Resilience series is about talking about how community wellness is factoring in, and of course Perry, that's Perry Hartwick from Niagara Geopark, is here to talk with us, and I'd like to introduce him now. Hello, Perry. How are you?
Hi, Diane. Good to be here.
I'm
How are you?
glad you're here. I'm good, thanks. I'm good. Well, I want to get right into it because I think this is so exciting what's happening with Niagara Geopark. So, the first thing I'd like to ask, how would you summarize Niagara Geopark, its history, and why it came to be?
So the Niagara Peninsula Geopark is aspiring to be part of the UNESCO Global Geopark Network.
Mhm.
And Geopark started in roughly in the mid 90s in Europe and in China. And they were governed by, they had a bit of an arrangement about basically starting areas of geologic interest to build on that geologic heritage and how our society and various other types of heritage
Mhm.
have are the result of geology, basically, and where we are in the world. And so UNESCO took that group under its umbrella in 2015. So now it's UNESCO Global Geoparks. There's something like 175 or so around the world right now. There are 5 in Canada. Niagara Peninsula would be the 6th, and so that's what we're trying to do. So, from a global perspective, they attract interest and foster knowledge about these specific and unique places in the world. And the more people know about where they live and where they grow up and why the Niagara Peninsula is here, what's the escarpment all about, what's the Niagara Falls all about, Lake Erie, Lake Ontario, the Wainfleet Bog, Onondaga escarpment down in near Fort Erie, and the sand dunes and the plains of Lake Iroquois, all those things. The more people know about it, the more enriched their experience is. And then on top of that, how has society evolved here and how we live and work? So that's one of the main underpinnings of why we want to have a geopark here in Niagara.
I think that's wonderful. I think that's great. Bringing attention to what we can sometimes take for granted because there's so much of it that we
Mhm.
walk by it every day. And then when
Mhm.
someone visits our region, they're pointing out to us what is beautiful about it. And we know it's beautiful. But
Mhm.
when we're reminded by tourists, wow, we have some amazing sites here, amazing natural sites. It's so beautiful to underline that, to locals here, because we can sometimes take it for granted because we're surrounded by it all the time. So, did you want to add something to that?
I mean, I could just a little bit. I could add basically UNESCO is a United Nations education and scientific organization. So it education is probably the number one thing that the world could use more of.
Yeah.
Um, and the more people understand science and nature, probably the better we're all going to be. So that is an underpinning of UNESCO. And I'll get to more of that, the sustainable development goals in a minute. But basically, as people learn more about where we are and more interesting facts and things about Niagara, they're more likely to want to go out to the corners and the, you know, previously unknown or unthought about areas of Niagara and spend a little time.
I agree. I
You
agree
know,
so much. Yeah, of
right. So we can talk a bit more of that about that. But this is
course.
in the news from the Geopark newsletter, our first newsletter that was just sent out about 3 weeks ago. The Sustainable Development Goals, UNESCO SDGs. There's 17 of them. The diagram looks like this.
Oh, that's great. You,
Um,
you send me a copy of that?
you should have this on your newsletter,
Wonderful.
uh,
Okay.
and I can definitely send it to you.
Yeah.
So there are 17 goals, and the Geopark has that basically all UNESCO organizations are meant to promote and foster, and the Geopark has keyed on 7 of them. And so with our members and our partners, we're trying to promote the 7, and they are no poverty, getting rid of poverty, good health and well-being, quality education, gender equality, decent work and economic growth, sustainable cities and communities,
Mm.
responsible consumption and production, climate action, and then finally partnerships for the goals. And that basically means that we should cooperate with other UNESCO organizations and anyone else, universities, etc., to achieve these goals.
I think
So that is really the basis of what we're trying to achieve here, is to promote sustainable development goals with a view of what I've already talked about,
I
geology and our sense of place.
yeah, yeah. So explain to me a little bit your role in this. What is your role and what is your official title?
Okay, I'm the volunteer chair of the volunteer board of UNESCO, excuse me, of the Niagara Peninsula Geopark. Volunteer. I'm also the resident geologist.
Mhm.
Volunteer. So I've been a geologist for, I don't know, 40 years.
Mhm.
And so I'm fascinated about geology and science. And about 5 years ago, a friend of mine who was involved with this came and approached me because they knew they'd need a geologist for this geopark. It was conceptualized by. Can you just hold on? I'm just going to shut this door 1 second.
Sure, go ahead. Sure, ahead. Take that time.
Sorry about that, Diane.
Oh, not a problem. Yeah.
So this was conceptualized as the Niagara to have a geopark in Niagara by Darren Platicus. He's our founder. He's on the board. He
Mhm.
came up with the concept in 2015, and he spoke with a friend of his, Ian Lucas, and the two of them pushed this along from zero to where we are now. They approached me probably 4 or 5 years ago about whether I'd be interested in being the geologist for the geopark.
Mhm.
And I thought it was a great idea. And then things sort of simmered along. And then I joined the board about 3 years ago or so. And now I'm the chair of the board.
Nice, nice, nice. And you're passionate about what you're doing because you're a geologist and now passionate
Yeah.
about going forward with it. And yeah, I was reading about some of the posts that you had before and articles that were written about your feedback and so on. You're very passionate about what you're doing, and I appreciate hearing that. So
Right.
so you've been loving uh, your life as a geologist, and now you're putting it to this wonderful, beautiful use. So
Right.
what drives you now to highlight the necessity of incorporating Indigenous knowledge? We touched on that a little bit earlier, and I just wanted you to expand a little bit on that. And of course, the approaches to remembering our ties to nature and understanding the ebbs and flows of that can happen to benefit us as human beings.
Right. Exactly. And Indigenous knowledge and traditions are very, very important all around the world. Um, it basically can help ground us who didn't grow up with that, to nature and to how to relate to nature. And it's more and more possible to exist without leaving your home. You don't have to go to a store anymore. You can do everything virtually. You can play virtual reality games,
Yeah.
and it's going to continue, I suppose, and see where we end up. But to me, being out in nature is what I've always loved since I've been 2 years old. So that's how I came about being a geologist. I've worked initially just being in nature, fishing, whatever, with my dad, maps, geography, grew into science, geology. I've spent much of my professional career around working around the country, and I've met scores of Indigenous people and worked out of Indigenous communities in the Northwest Territories. Before it was Nunavut, I was up there a fair bit. So I learned to appreciate their
Mhm.
approach.
Yeah.
Um,
And you
and
recently signed an agreement, didn't you?
yes, we've signed a agreement of understanding with the Fort Erie, well, two actually. So the Fort Erie Native Friendship Center,
Mhm.
we have an understanding that we're going to help promote each other, and we're one of the things that they're doing very, very passionately is trying to retain these Indigenous languages and keep them from extinction, which is
Yeah.
sort of going on all over the world. And um, obviously, if a language, if a spoken language, chiefly spoken language, is not spoken, then it will die. So that is what we're doing interpretation. We're having them do some interpretation for us, and we're going to try to see how much we can help them get their message out and see if we can shine a light on their good works at the Fort Erie Friendship Center. And we just received a band council resolution from the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, where they've basically endorsed what we're doing, and we've got channels now for us to be able to highlight things that are important to them, and basically we're trying to shine a light on any Indigenous initiative, or thought process, basically the two eyes approach to to living. Basically, there's science, and then there's Indigenous knowledge.
Yes, yes, because I think the two obviously have a place in history and obviously now and going forward, it only makes sense that
Mhm.
they complement each other actually. So I think
Mhm.
it's wonderful to bring that out in this way, and the education factor around language and history, how history can be told much more clearly in the original language, and then in the translation, some can be lost. So in really respecting the beauty and the importance of holding true to the original tongue, I think will keep the history of the cultures alive. And I think it's really important that you're highlighting that, and I really appreciate that as well. I'm a lover of language, so I think it's really important. I might not be very well versed in speaking various languages, but I really appreciate the importance of how the emotional context of language can really convey a different layer to what is being said. So
Right.
I really think that's important. So how would you say this factors into local businesses in Niagara Region? How would you say that plays a part since COVID has begun? Because it really impacts the local businesses, and being in the midst of this, how will this be of benefit to local businesses, would you say, in communities? You mentioned a little bit about communities, but more so local businesses now. What would you say?
Right, and that's a big part of what we are trying to drive. We're trying to drive businesses business and interest to local businesses, whether they're Indigenous or non-Indigenous. Um, our effect during COVID is hard to gauge. We basically went from being a concept to being a week or two from having our application submitted formally to UNESCO throughout COVID. So our very capable and professional volunteer board has worked tirelessly on getting this together all through COVID. So I know this is not exactly what you are asking. But we took this fairly monumental step and process all during COVID when we couldn't meet. So I just like to say that this was done under very difficult circumstances, like everybody's is experienced, but we pushed through. You know, our presence and influence in the region is growing significantly. How much we've actually helped individual businesses so far through the pandemic, I don't want to overstate that, because we're just appearing on the landscape, really, figuratively speaking. But certainly, having the Geopark draw attention to sustainably minded businesses who are working towards certain aspects of the sustainable development goals and trying to operate in as environmentally benign way as possible is going to help a lot of businesses, because the Geopark around the world attracts people who are interested in ecologically sound practices. So we're going to be able to, we're kind of a marketing umbrella. And I'd like to also point out that we don't, what we want to do is work with all the marketing organizations, district marketing organizations, and chambers of commerce. We're trying to kind of package all of our members and what the great amazing things that can be done and seen around the Niagara region, and package it in such a way that it can be marketed through established channels of marketing.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, some people will find it through directly through our website, etc., and our Facebook page, but mostly we're trying to repackage or package Niagara in this different way, if it makes any sense, as opposed to right now it's kind of, there's Niagara Falls, there's Niagara on the Lake, you know, the gorge. That's pretty much it.
Mm-hmm.
But really, Niagara on the Lake and Niagara Gorge and Niagara Falls are part of the Niagara region, and why not come and spend an extra day or two checking out some of these other wonderful places that you would maybe normally have driven right past.
Mm-hmm. I think it's a good point that you mentioned. What are the three places that are drawing people to the region? And then once people are here, you're saying to expand what they look at. So again, it goes back to education. Educating people about what's here is a really big part of this, and being really grateful for the three places so far that are pulling everyone here. And I think it's really, yes, I think it is definitely about educating people about what's here, and having that wonderful stepping stone to understand even more.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I think that's wonderful. So looking at this now, we're coming to a close with our talks. I could keep talking to you so much more about this, because I enjoyed geology. I'm not an expert at it, obviously, but I just think it's wonderful how it tells stories about us, and etc. But what are three things you want people to take away from our talk today?
Well, I could three things I'd like you to. We have key objectives, and we posted them on our newsletter. And maybe I'll just read them to you.
Okay.
And see how that makes sense. It makes sense to you. So, firstly, we work hard to better understand our part in nature and how to tread lightly on the earth upon which our mutual survival depends. So that's first and foremost. We respect our collective geological, cultural, indigenous, industrial, and agricultural heritage. And we build interactive educational programs for all ages and demographics. So that's the part about how we're trying to build programs to be marketed and to be accessible to visitors and
Right.
locals. And we help to create and grow sustainable tourism experiences all across Niagara by leveraging key partnerships with destination marketing organizations, like I said, businesses, governments, Indigenous groups, schools, post-secondary educational groups, and sports groups. So we want to work with every existing body
Mhm.
that is in Niagara and beyond to focus attention on Niagara, which is now soon to be the UNESCO Global Geopark.
Okay. All right. And so, would you say then, how would people find information or even get in touch with someone to talk to them directly,
Well,
to start the process going? How would they get
right. So I would encourage everybody to sign up for our newsletter or to join as as an operator, a geopark operator, and you can go to niagarageopark.com,
Okay. All right.
and you can also find us under Niagara Geopark on Instagram and Facebook.
All right. So
So that,
what I can do then, Perry, is if you can send me those links. I believe I
Mhm,
have them already, but just to make
mhm,
sure I
I
have them,
will.
and I'll compare and then post it with this particular. Uh,
Wonderful. I'll do that. Do
yeah,
that when we're done, Diane.
yeah, okay. And that it'd be wonderful to share this information from both sides,
Mhm.
and share this with the different platforms that you know, and get the information out so that everyone knows what's going on and so on. Because it's just been a long time coming to get to know the specifics about Niagara Geopark and to understand what that means for the region. And as you know, this is Business Wellness Cafe Resilience Series, season 2. So in season 2, it's about talking to the aspects of what business means in the region, the bigger picture of that, what feeds business wellness in this region, as well as how business wellness feeds outwardly. So it's really a symbiotic relationship that I'm looking at whenever I do interviews like these. What is it that helps to feed the balance that we need in this region and communities
Wonderful, Diane.
thriving, et cetera? Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
I'm sure your most of your listeners and followers are perfectly suited to become members of the Geopark. It's free right now too, by the way. This is a nonprofit organization, and it'll never be very expensive. Right now, it's free until we get UNESCO certification, like we said, in maybe about a year or so.
Wonderful.
But please, I'd encourage everyone to take a look.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Perry. You've been very gracious with your time, and of course, everything. I'll look through this and look to see if there's any additional stuff that I might want to put in the comments to sort of flesh out anything that anyone might have questions about based on what we
Very good.
talk about.
Thank
But
you,
so
Diane.
far, it sounds great so far, and I think it'll be fine just as is. But yeah, thank you so much for showing up, and of course, enjoy the rest of your afternoon.
Thank you,
And
and have a great weekend, Diane.
yes, wonderful. And you too. All right.
Thank you.
All
Take
right.
care.
Cheers. Namaste to
Bye.
you. Enjoy. Cheers. Bye
Bye.
bye.